Hello, good morning. You're watching Sky News Breakfast. A report out this morning from the Centre for Social Justice has warned chronic poverty risks pulling the UK back into the social divide of the Victorian era. Now, it points to COVID lockdowns as one factor, arguing that they had a catastrophic effect on the nation's social fabric. Let's take a look at the numbers. It says almost 13.5 million people currently lead lives beset by stagnant wages, poor housing, ill health and crime. And the report goes on to say that the UK's most disadvantaged are no better off than 15 years ago during the financial crash. Oh dear. Well, with us this morning to review the papers are author and broadcaster Emma Wharf and presenter and writer, it's Matthew Stadland. Thank you so much for joining us again. Let's get straight to it. We'll start with the Times. A very interesting story here about how schools have a role in teaching young people manners or even practical things like how to iron a shirt.
Yeah,
Emma.
This is Winchester College, which now has a female head teacher, which I think is brilliant, and is also Rishi Sunak's old school. And they're teaching teenage boys essential life skills, what they call essential life skills, things like, as you say, how to iron a shirt, the art of conversation around the dinner table, how to write polite emails and letters, how to shake hands properly. So these kind of basic things that we kind of assume that all adults will know how to do, or that even we don't really care about anymore. But I think when you stop and actually reflect, I think we do care about those things. I think it is a bit odd when someone can't just give you a good handshake, or when they can't reply politely to an email, when they can't iron a shirt. These are basic things, and maybe as parents we don't necessarily get round to
It's so true.
teaching
My
them.
6-year-old, I've started to make him, after he's finished dinner, take his bowl to the sink, because it's things like that as parents, you just whip up, you take the bowl, you do this, you do that, and they don't end up doing it.
It shouldn't stop at the sink. When I was a boy, I sort of stopped at the sink, and actually my wife has made perfectly clear it has to go into the dishwasher if you're using a dishwasher, and if you're not, then you've got to wash it up. This story is, I'm only teasing you. I think you're doing a good job, obviously, as a mum. But this story is only a story because it's Rishi Sunak's old school. Strangely, my mum's dad was the second master at Winchester, sort of deputy headmaster, and in those days, on Sunday evenings, they were at a boarding school. They'd read Shakespeare, I think, and recite Shakespeare and so forth. And that was a good thing, and I think it would be good to continue with those sorts of traditions. But it is absolutely vital for boys to know how to iron and how to do all these sorts of things. I just think and I went to an all-boys school myself, I think if they went to a mixed school, they'd learn a lot more life skills, because you actually interact with girls.
And why not teach? Well, I went to an all-girls school, and why not teach girls, I just don't know in the curriculum now, but basic sort of maintenance things that we always assume you need a bloke around to do, not just like how to wire a plug, because I think children do learn that kind of thing, but, how to do the things that you'd traditionally get a man in to do, or, how to kind of, how to tie things in the car,
how to tie
Yes, well, you're getting your revenge now. How to tie my tie, exactly. I'm really sorry.
It's hard as parents to do all of that. Shoelaces are time-consuming enough. My 3-year-old is not getting anywhere with shoelaces.
Well, my 6-year-old doesn't know how to do that, so you're on a good footing, Emma. OK, look, let's move on. This is page 12 of The Observer, and this was the Eat Out to Help Out. Rishi Sunak, who was billed as the saviour of the economy during COVID. Well, they're saying in The Observer it's going to haunt Sunak.
Well, it's another massive week for the Prime Minister, isn't it? We were talking earlier about the front page of the Sunday Telegraph, which deals with the Rwanda policy and the huge flop that seems to be. But this is him going to be under the spotlight in the COVID inquiry. And I can't remember this at the time, but the chief scientific advisor, Professor Dame Angela McLean, at the time had called Sunak Dr. Death. So this is for the Eat Out to help out, and he's obviously going to be rigorously questioned about this. I think there are interesting wider questions about this inquiry, and Emma, you were touching on that report that you mentioned at the top of the hour as well about the extreme levels of poverty created by the pandemic. And if it's going to be a worthwhile inquiry, I am desperate to know, as someone who broadly backed lockdowns, and I think you opposed them, whether actually they did more harm than good or more good than harm. I think we know they saved lives, but did they also severely damage lives? And where does the balance sheet work out on that? I think that is a critical question for this inquiry to answer. And Sunak's attempts to sort of breathe life back into the economy, and also, of course, into his own political political career because he kind of became a star of the pandemic, I think that's a crucial plank in it.
Yeah, more to come on that through the week. Let's move on to travel chaos, because that rush to get home for Christmas is going to be a huge headache for lots of people, particularly on Christmas Eve. This is a huge spread in the Mail on Sunday.
Yeah, it's holiday trains misery. And we get this story every year, a bit like, winter pressure on the NHS. We get this story every year, but I think it's been a particularly miserable year for the travelling public with, very, very dirty, expensive, overcrowded, delayed, often cancelled trains, rail strikes, endless rail strikes, and now we hear that many of the stations will be closed, many mainline stations, and in London we'll have King's Cross and Paddington, which are very much kind of hubs, will be closed on Boxing Day and also on, I think it's, later on, just a few days after. The problem with this, one appreciates why they need to close and do essential engineering work over the holiday period. It's sort of less busy than during the working week, although fewer people are coming into town for working nowadays, people working from home. But you do wonder, why do they have to do it over Christmas? On Christmas Eve, when many people will finish work on the 23rd, try and rush back to their family that don't live in towns, that are trying just to get places on Christmas Eve.
Well, the interesting thing is car rental companies were saying, during the strike action, they have a huge surge in booking and then more people are on the road.
And this fits into the wider narrative of what seems to me a sort of fact that our rail system doesn't really work properly in this country, for having the strikes from the drivers who earn a lot of money, and people might expect me as sort of broadly on the left to support that. I don't. It really cripples the everyday lives of people who don't earn very much money themselves, desperate to see friends. It's really damaging to businesses. And also, we're trying to live in a world where we're decarbonising. So sticking more people on the roads when our rail network doesn't work properly is terrible.
Yeah, hear. Great to have your company today. Thank you so much, Emma, Matthew. Hopefully see you soon before Christmas.
With a better tie.
With a lovely tie, I have to add. Thank you.